The movie begins in the year 1760, where we see the wealthy Collins family, which consists of only 3 members, the mother, father, and their son, Alexander. Alexander's father owns a massive fishing business in the sea, and he has built a town near the American coastline called Collinsport. One day, Alexander's father tells him that the greatest wealth in the world is family, and he should always take care of his loved ones. In Collinsport, he builds a beautiful and luxurious mansion for his family and names it Collinwood. As the years pass, their fishing business grows rapidly, and Alexander becomes a young man. During this time, he falls in love with a maid who works in their house named Angelique. One day, Angelique tells Alexander that she loves him deeply and wants to marry him so she can spend her entire life with him. However, Alexander refuses to marry her. Heartbroken and furious, Angelique decides to ruin his life. She uses black magic and causes a statue from the mansion to fall on Alexander's parents, killing them instantly. Alexander realizes this was not an accident, but black magic. So, he begins studying books related to black magic himself. Time passes, and Alexander meets a beautiful girl named Josette, and both of them fall in love. Seeing their love, Angelique becomes extremely jealous and angry. Once again, she turns to black magic and hypnotizes Josette. Under Angelique's spell, Josette walks to the top of a tall cliff, and before Alexander can reach her, she jumps off and kills herself. Watching the love of his life die in front of him, Alexander also jumps after her. But even after falling from such a great height, Alexander doesn't die because Angelique has cursed him, turning him into a vampire so that he would live forever suffering in pain. When Angelique realizes that Alexander will never belong to her, she provokes the villagers against him. The villagers capture Alexander, lock him inside a coffin, and bury him deep underground. And just like that, 200 years pass. Now, the story shifts to the year 1972, where a girl named Victoria is traveling to Collinsport by train. On her way, she gets a lift and reaches the Collinwood mansion. As soon as she arrives, a servant named Billy opens the door for her. Inside, Victoria sees a portrait of Alexander on the wall. Looking at him, she asks who he is. Just then, a woman named Elizabeth arrives and tells her that this is Alexander, a noble and great member of the Collins family. We also learn that Elizabeth belongs to the Collins family. She had published an advertisement in the newspaper saying she needed a caretaker because only a few people live in this huge mansion herself, her daughter Carolyn, her brother Roger, and Roger's son David, whom Victoria has been hired to look after. Victoria then asks Elizabeth about David's mother. Elizabeth tells her that David's mother drowned in the sea and died, but David still refuses to believe it. He thinks he can still see his mother and even talk to her. Elizabeth then introduces Victoria to her daughter Carolyn, who is stubborn and mischievous by nature. That night at dinner, Elizabeth introduces Victoria to David's father Roger. Also present at the table is a psychiatrist named Dr. Julia. Since David claims he can still see his mother, Elizabeth believed he needed psychological treatment, so Dr. Julia has been living there for 3 years treating him. Meanwhile, Victoria notices someone at a distance covered in a white sheet. It is actually David trying to scare her, but she doesn't get frightened. Later, when Victoria is in her room arranging her clothes, she again sees someone standing in front of her room covered in a white sheet. Thinking it's David again, she removes the sheet, but instead of David, it is Josette's ghost. Josette tells Victoria he is coming and then disappears. On the other side of town, we see some workers digging the ground with a JCB machine. Suddenly, they feel something solid underground. After removing the soil, they find a coffin, the same coffin Alexander was trapped in. The supervisor cuts the chains on the coffin, freeing Alexander from his imprisonment, and Alexander kills them all one by one. After this, Alexander reaches his home, Collinwood, where he meets Billy in the garden. He hypnotizes Billy and takes control of him, then asks whether members of the Collins family still live in this house. Billy replies yes. After that, Alexander goes inside the mansion and starts admiring the royal belongings of his house. He also explains these things to Billy. Meanwhile, Caroline and David come there. Seeing Alexander, Caroline thinks he is some crazy drunk guy, but David shows her the old portrait of Alexander on the wall. Just then, Elizabeth arrives and tells the kids to stay away from him. David says that he is claiming to be their relative, but Elizabeth considers him an imposter and takes him to another room, warning him to stop this joke immediately. To prove himself, Alexander opens a secret door and takes her to a hidden underground chamber that Elizabeth never knew existed. The chamber was filled with jewels and treasures. Seeing all this, Elizabeth is shocked and finally believes that he is truly Alexander, the son of the Collins family. Alexander then tells Elizabeth that he is a vampire and promises that he will never harm any member of the family. Later, at the dinner table, Elizabeth tells everyone that Alexander is a distant relative of theirs. Soon, Dr. Julia arrives and Elizabeth introduces her to Alexander. Alexander then asks about their fishing business. Elizabeth sadly tells him that their business is almost destroyed because a woman named Angie has taken control of it by making deals with the fishermen. Alexander confidently says that now that he has returned, he will bring their business back to the top. At that moment, Victoria arrives. Seeing her, Alexander calls her Josette because Victoria looks exactly like Josette. They talk and Victoria introduces herself. Then we see Angie, who is actually Angelique, the same witch who ruined Alexander's life. Through dark magic, she turned herself into a witch and changed her identity, living for 200 years. She goes to her office, where she learns that during last night's excavation, workers found a 200-year-old coffin, and later those workers were brutally killed. Hearing this, Angelique is shocked and immediately realizes that Alexander has been freed. She goes straight to Collinwood and starts talking to Elizabeth. Soon, Alexander arrives and shakes hands with her. He instantly understands that she is Angelique. He takes her to another room to talk about the fishing business. She tells him that the business now belongs to her, and he must have understood who she is. Alexander angrily says that she is the witch who destroyed everything he ever loved and threatens to get her punished for black magic. But she confidently replies that he can do nothing because no one will believe him. She has been living in society with respect under different identities for 200 years, and Collinsport now belongs to her. After she leaves, Alexander tells Elizabeth everything, how Angelique ruined his parents, his love, and his entire life. Elizabeth encourages him and tells him that he can rebuild the business and restore the family's honor. Alexander renovates the mansion beautifully and then focuses on rebuilding the business. He meets major fishermen with Billy's help, hypnotizes them, and convinces them to leave Angelique's work and support the Collins family again. Slowly, the fishing business begins to rise once more. One day, Dr. Julia sees Alexander peeking into Caroline's room and trying to understand a strange lamp. She becomes suspicious and talks to him. Introducing herself as a psychiatrist, she hypnotizes him and learns everything, including the fact that he is a vampire. She later speaks to Elizabeth and questions why she allowed him to stay despite knowing the truth. Elizabeth assures her that Alexander will not harm anyone and asks her to keep this secret. On the other side, Alexander asks Caroline to teach him how love works in today's world. Caroline advises him to first change his appearance and strange behavior and start living like a normal person so that people feel comfortable talking to him. Then, with time, he will gradually learn how love happens. The next day, we see Dr. Julia drawing Alexander's blood because she had convinced him that she would remove all his vampire blood and replace it with human blood, which would turn him back into a normal human again. In the next scene, we see Alexander and Victoria together near the seashore, and it seems like both of them have started liking each other. Meanwhile, Angelique is in a meeting with all the board members of her business. They inform her that their business is slowly declining. Angelique then orders them to arrange a meeting with Alexander. Later in the evening, Angelique meets Alexander and gives him a check, asking him to take the money and leave the fishing business, but Alexander refuses. Then Angelique goes closer to him and offers to run the business together. Still, he rejects her because he can never forgive what she did to him in the past. On the other side, Victoria has a dream at night where she sees her childhood. Since childhood, she used to see Josette's spirit and even talk to her, but her parents could never understand this and thought she was mentally unstable, so they sent her to a mental hospital. Suddenly, Victoria wakes up and actually sees Josette's spirit in front of her. She follows the spirit through the mansion, and then Josette's spirit jumps from the chandelier, just like she did when she committed suicide. The next day, Alexander arranges a grand party at the mansion with everyone's permission and invites many people from the town. During the party, Alexander sees David standing outside a locked room. David says his father has forbidden anyone from entering that room. Alexander realizes something suspicious is going on. Inside the room, we see Roger with another woman he is having an affair with, and Alexander witnesses everything. Meanwhile, outside, Victoria is standing alone, so Alexander goes to her and invites her inside. Victoria then opens up and tells him about her childhood experiences, how she always saw a spirit, how that spirit guided her to Collinwood, and how after meeting Alexander, she felt like she had known him for centuries. She believes it was destiny that brought them together. They both kiss, and Angelique sees this, as she has entered the party without an invitation. Afterward, Alexander goes to Dr. Julia and finds her transfusing his blood into her own body. He immediately understands that Julia never intended to make him human. Instead, she wanted to use his blood to make herself immortal. Furious, Alexander kills her and, with Billy's help, throws her body into the ocean. Then we see Roger trying to find the secret door to the mansion's hidden treasure. At that moment, Alexander arrives. He already knew that Roger married David's mother only for money. Angry, Alexander gives him two options: either stay at Collinwood and become a responsible father to David, or take a large amount of money from the treasure and leave forever to live a selfish life. Roger chooses money and leaves his son behind forever. Seeing his father leave, David is heartbroken and runs toward his room. While running, a heavy object is about to fall on him from the staircase, but Alexander saves him instantly. Everyone is shocked because no normal human could have done that. Just then, sunlight falls on Alexander and his body catches fire. Billy quickly pours water on him and saves him. Now the whole family realizes that Alexander is a vampire. Scared, everyone leaves him. And even Victoria distances herself after learning the truth. After this, Alexander goes to Angelique and begs her to free him from the curse. But Angelique refuses and gives him two choices: either stay with her as a lover and partner in business, or she will lock him in a coffin forever again. Hearing this, Alexander refuses, but Angelique cleverly provokes him into talking about Dr. Julia because she already knows Alexander has killed her. Out of anger, Alexander blurts out that yes, he did kill Dr. Julia. The moment he steps outside, Angelique uses her magic to trap him in a coffin again and chains his entire body. While taking him away with her men, she also sets his fishing factory on fire. Alexander is taken to a broken old house deep inside the forest, where Angelique leaves him locked inside the coffin. After they leave, David arrives sent there by his mother's spirit and frees Alexander. Meanwhile, due to the huge fire at the fishing factory, police and townspeople gather there. Angelique arrives and, through the microphone, tells everyone that Alexander is a murderer and that the biggest culprits are his family members who tried to hide the truth. She then takes the police and the town people to Collinwood. Just then, Alexander also reaches there and says he accepts everything, and suddenly he bites Angelique in front of everyone. But nothing happens to Angelique. Instead, she throws Alexander away with great force. Everyone is terrified and realizes both of them are vampires. The police become alert and order everyone to leave the place immediately. A dangerous battle starts between Alexander and Angelique. Elizabeth grabs a gun and shoots her, but it has no effect. Angelique stands up again and uses magic to bring objects in the mansion to life. She sends a giant snake to attack Elizabeth, sets the mansion ablaze, and traps Alexander using a magical statue. Then we learn that Angelique had turned Caroline into a fierce werewolf using black magic. Caroline suddenly transforms and viciously attacks Angelique, trying repeatedly to kill her, but Angelique overpowers her and knocks her unconscious. Angelique then goes to Alexander to kill him and proudly says she destroyed everything in his life and that David's mother didn't drown, she was murdered by Angelique herself. Just then, David appears and warns her to leave Alexander, otherwise his mother's spirit will destroy her. Immediately, David's mother's spirit appears and attacks Angelique with powerful energy, throwing her hard into a giant chandelier. Alexander breaks free from the statue's grip and tells everyone to leave the mansion. He then goes to Angelique. He now understands that Angelique's end was destined with the breaking of that chandelier. Soon, Angelique's life ends right there. On the other side, we see Victoria walking toward the same cliff, from where Josette once jumped and committed suicide. She now knows that Alexander is a vampire, and a vampire can never become a normal human. Alexander rushes there and catches her before she falls, but she says they can never truly be together because she is just a normal human. There is only one way he must turn her into a vampire like him, but Alexander refuses. Victoria then purposely falls from the cliff. To save her, Alexander bites her before she hits the ground. Because of that, Victoria doesn't die. Instead, she turns into a vampire too. Both of them are now happy because they are finally the same and can live together forever. In the final scene, we see Dr. Julia's body deep in the ocean. Suddenly, her eyes open because Alexander had bitten her before killing her. She too has now become a vampire. And with this, the story ends.